Hi, friend.
What's happening? Welcome to what are we calling this? This is Aligned Relationships Podcast.
Aligned relationships, casting live from our spaceships in various parts of the country. Yes.
I love it. I love it.
I'm Tracy from Balanced Roar, and you may also know me as Pocket. So either one
Yes,
works.
I go by many noms de guerre. I'm Kevin. Pocket calls me Badger.
So we might slip on our casual names, but thank you so much for having this conversation with me. We Kevin and I have a lot of these conversations, and we thought it would be really neat to record one and to share it. I'm not sure where to start, but
I do. Let's go.
oh, great, bring it.
Yeah, we had this wonderful conversation the other day, and you shared with me this article that you've been writing, sort of detailing the process and journey of this last relationship that you were in. And I read it and I was struck by several things and thought, this needs to be a conversation because this is important stuff. I think it's going to help a lot of people. And I learned a ton from this. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Um, let's I don't know, let's jump in. Like I want to jump in on something that you said here.
Okay.
Um, there's a lot of we have a lot of bullet points, but here,
Yeah, great.
um, in this article, you said I previously asked for a partner to practice with, not a long-term partner yet, but a testing ground for these tools that I've developed and been able to hone in on in other areas with friends and family. And I asked for a safe romantic partner to practice with. Can you tell us more about that? Because that is a lovely idea.
Yeah, so I do manifesting rituals with each new moon and kind of write down bullet points in present tense of where I want to be in 6 months. And I've been working on relationshiping a lot over the last couple of years. Ironically, during quarantine is when I found deeper relationships. Maybe it was because we didn't have all the outside noise and we're really connecting more intently. But also moving across the country here to New Orleans during the pandemic and really getting to decide now as an adult with people who don't know me in the city. I only knew like two people when I moved here. I can be anyone I want to be. I can create anything I want to create here. What do I want? What do I want that to look like? And that's been quite a journey because at the same time, I was digging in really deep in therapy to work on all the things I'd kind of been running from a few years. I I left San Diego in 2017 and was traveling the world in the country for 3.5 years. So I would stay with friends and families and I would have lovely intimate connections with them. But then I'd go on like random dates in Iowa and DC. And those were all these brief, super surface encounters, right? So when I got here, I got involved in a toxic situationship that was everything from my 20s all over again. And I was like, I am almost 40 years old. How am I still doing this? So that took a lot of work to look at my participation in the cycle to see what was really mine. Not jerks are attracted to me, narcissists love me. It's like, no, I love narcissists too. what why is that?
Mhm.
How do I feel safe in that pattern that isn't truly lovely, you know? So I had to dig into those shadows, to those patterns, to those habits. And I saw it spread out through my friendships and my family relationships, you know, learning self love, boundaries, um, my own self worth, acknowledging my desires, like all of that impacted all these existing relationships. And I hadn't really had a romantic partner to practice those same tools with. I'd gone on a bunch of dates. We
Mhm.
talked about my terrible onboarding history, like one or two dates, and then I was completely uninterested, terrible kisser or bad at communicating, whatever. Like no one was making it past the initial steps, which is fine. I learned like that's my new discernment. I used to talk my way into a lot of these relationships, give people so much
Mhm.
room and so much grace to the point where it was impacting me negatively. But that's a new thing with new boundaries and new self-worth is I'm like, no, you're not for me, and that's fine. You'll be for somebody else. I don't have to fix you. That was also a habit I've had to break,
Mhm.
that I would find people who wanted fixing, who I felt needed fixing, and I felt I could help them, and it was my job. And that's not my job in a romantic relationship. I
Yeah.
want someone who can meet me where I'm at.
Yeah.
So a few months back, working with my therapist, I was like, I want a testing ground. I want a safe space with someone who can communicate so I can practice these tools. And it doesn't have to be a forever person, which I have issues with anyway. Like a relationship can be 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, two lifetimes, whatever. Like that's not something getting into any relationship, but I wanted a low stakes relationship where I could practice these tools. So that's
I
what I
love that.
found.
And I think that's so correct because when you think about there's what 7 8 billion people on this planet, and only a fraction of that at any given time are actively in the right target market, target age range, target whatever for you. And then even a smaller fraction of that is actually going to be a right fit personality wise. And so a lot of it is timing and
Yeah.
propinquity, closeness or nearness, right? If you live in Louisiana, you're going to find people in Louisiana. If you're traveling, you're going
Right.
to find people that are traveling.
Right.
All of those affect that decision, which is one of the most important decisions that we can make. And like you said, one of the phrases that I hear you say often is, if it costs me my what is it? If it costs me my well-being, it's too much. It's too expensive.
If
Yeah,
if it costs me my
something like
peace,
that.
it's too expensive. Yeah.
There you go. Peace.
From
Yes.
from
Yeah.
Maddie Murphy.
Someone else,
Yeah.
someone. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what? Someone's waiting.
Right. And I've seen this clip from Seinfeld circulating recently on social media, and a woman breaks up with Seinfeld. He's like, "Okay, great, thanks, bye." And it should be like that, like, okay, that wasn't a great fit. We sure did try, had a good time. Hopefully we treated each other respectfully. Like, thank you, next. And that doesn't mean there's not bigger impact emotionally speaking, but if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. And that's okay. I think it's trying to like shoehorn your foot into something that doesn't fit that is what actually creates dis-ease and pain.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think, especially in those early stages, the job isn't to achieve a relationship. I spent some time with horses recently, and
Yeah.
the directive was, let's explore connection, not to achieve connection with these horses, but to explore it. Let's experiment. What does that look like? And every horse needs a different thing. What is this new being, this new creature in front of me? How does that connection play?
Yeah. And with horses in particular, you don't know their history and their past. They can't tell you what has hurt them in the
Mhm.
past. That a mouse scared them and they jumped and they broke their leg, whatever. Like they can't tell you how they've been hurt or what triggers them. So I think that's a beautiful metaphor for relationships with people, is that sometimes we do know what has affected us and sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're not aware, and it takes these relationships to bring something to light. And I think when it's brought to light, that's when we're ready to deal with it. But we may not know everything. We don't know everything.
No, no. And relationships are the testing ground, the battleground for that. Uh, you can't work on yourself completely in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Like it's within the context of intimate partnerships that bring out these shadows and demons that we think we may have dealt with, but not necessarily. And there's more work to be done. Um, yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about that a lot too, how being witnessed in our growth in the relationship is important, but also not doing it alone within a vacuum. Like there's no way to fully see if the work I've done on my relationships is anything without a relationship, without trying it, right? I need a scene partner. I need to dialogue. Like it's not, relationships aren't a monologue.
Yeah. And there needs to be grace within a healthy relationship for because I'm going to trigger you, you're going to trigger me, and we need to have healthy ways of figuring that out together.
Absolutely. And knowing it's going to happen and yeah, giving each other grace within that. And I think that was something that I learned in this, that I said in the article that I learned in this relationship. When I first posted a video on TikTok, like I saw a red flag and everyone was like, run, screw that guy, get out of there. I was like, but that doesn't teach me anything. But I am not
Right.
learning anything about myself. Like it's absolutely the easy, safe thing to do to be like, I'm out, no contact, whatever. But seeing as this was the first incident, like allowing some grace and some curiosity as to what was really
Mm.
going on. Yeah,
I love that word, curiosity. Yeah.
yeah, big fan. Yeah, and within, mm, you've really, our relationship, our platonic relationship has really sparked what I call a glimmer. When you see something you want, the knee jerk reaction may be jealousy, like, oh, they have that, I want that. But we could also transmute it into a glimmer, like, ooh, I want that. I see that. Now I thank you for showing me I can have that. And you, in your embodiment of the divine masculine, like, has been that absolute glimmer for me. And when I see within my friendships how men treat me, I absolutely have to turn that into my romantic relationships and being like, my friends wouldn't treat me like that. Why would I allow you to treat me like that? Like just because we're sleeping together? Like how is that? That should make it less okay, not more okay, right?
Yeah.
But having these intimate, lovely relationships has absolutely been part of my growth within the romantic relationships
Yeah.
is seeing that glimmer in other
Yeah.
people.
I get to have amazing emotional intimacy with my friendships, and it's like if you're not willing to do that or capable of that, you don't
Uh,
even get to be in the ballpark. Like there's a bar that's been set, and
yeah.
unfortunately, most people aren't willing or capable of real emotional intimacy. I think part of
I
our responsibility within relationships is to do the self work so that we're not running on triggers and shadows and things that we're not aware of. And that's complicated and that's complex because there are ways that we run our life that have become so normalized and natural to us that we don't even see that this is a thing that I'm doing because of that trauma or that hurt or that past
Right.
relationship, and I'm doing all this projecting and reliving the past, and I need to work on that in myself so that
Yeah.
I'm not impacting whatever the next relationship is because of that.
We talk about that a lot in psychology with schemas, our maladaptive behaviors, things we learned as children in order to survive and thrive in whatever environment we were in, from our caregivers, from the other adults around us. My family, I learned people pleasing. So I've spent a long time realizing that that was a maladaptive behavior, that keeping the peace at my expense actually isn't peaceful
Mhm.
for me, which is where boundaries and standing up for myself have come from. And in the Untethered Soul, they talk about samskaras, same thing. We have these imprints of experiences that we gather through our life. There's a snake. Snake is scary. Snake bit me. Snake bad. Every time you see a snake, snake bad, right? And it's the challenge, the work is absolutely in zooming out and trying to look at it more objectively and being like, I had a bad experience with a snake once, correct? That snake bit me. Not all snakes bite even. And some of them are really good at catching gophers, which were tearing up my yard. It's trying to zoom out and understand and honor that experience, not negate it by any means, but say, yeah, I got bit once and that was scary. And of course, I'm going to have that reaction, but this is a new snake. This is a new incident. Being able to approach it again with that curiosity and knowing that those stories exist within our head instead of just believing them.
Yeah. And those two situations can look very similar. Red and yellow will kill a fella, red and black won't hurt Jack.
Right.
Um, and part of our responsibility there is to establish appropriate boundaries boundaries protect ourselves. It
Right.
protects the other person. It protects the relationship.
Yeah.
I'll share this real quick. So, back to horses.
Yeah.
When you're working with a dominant horse,
Mm-hmm.
the type of horse, imagine a black stallion
Yeah.
that is very likely to bowl you over if you're not appropriate with your boundary setting.
Yeah.
It's wise to set two boundaries. The first boundary is for safety,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be a much larger boundary than you might originally or naturally normally do. So you create a
Mm-hmm.
large boundary, and then you invite them in. And then you set a second boundary, and that's the boundary for interaction. So there's a safety boundary as well as an interaction boundary. And I think that applies to the types of people in our life that are big personalities or in relationships where that's a safety boundary. This is where we can interact. And that showing that respectful approach to that inner boundary is important.
I love that. I love the nuance of the boundaries. With a stranger you meet on a dating app, that wide boundary is, are you a serial killer? Are you going to dump my body in a river? And that, for me, that takes a long while to get past when you're a stranger, versus a friend
Yeah.
of a friend or someone I've known. That boundary it takes a lot longer to be able to get into that intimate boundary with
Yeah.
strangers, and it should. That's for my
Yeah.
safety. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That translates really well. You also said you have, which I find so lovely, you are capable, you have all these deep emotional connections with people, and that's one of the things I found incredibly unique about you as one of the more masculine men I know, that there is this beautiful strength in owning both sides of the spectrum, because I feel that same way too, that our emotional world, the nurturing, is typically been trained in us to be the more feminine aspect, whereas the protector and the leader has been the more dominant. But I think you found a beautiful way to be both. And I'm curious about how that experience has been for you. Like, how did you get there? What did you do?
um, I, I wish I had a better answer for you on this, but honestly, I've just been really lucky my entire life. When I was 16, I was at a group home and I met a man, Rick, who's an amazing guitarist, blues guitarist, who had studied under Yogananda Paramahansa in an ashram from when he was like 12, and um, you know, was a beautiful, masculine, feminine man that embraced both and showed me what's possible, right? And I remember saying, like, if I'm a fraction of the man that Rick is, like, then I've done a good job. And thank you for saying that, because that reflects that, right? I mean, if we think about men in the 60s and 70s, take Robert Plant, for example, like, highlight of like masculine energy, but also at the same time very effeminate in many ways.
Yeah.
Um, there's there's that balance. And for me, I mean, let's take a step back to when I was in my 20s and I was really angry, and that anger prevented me from accessing the correct energies of femininity and emotional depth. And I couldn't touch those things. So it took loss, to be honest, and a lot of grief and heartache and trouble and trauma and catastrophic life events that make me go, okay, this isn't working. I need to deal with this. And I found a beautiful men's group that has become a big part of my life, where these men showed me how to not be afraid of men, which I think is important
Yeah.
because, especially as young boys with probably domineering fathers, right? Um, we learn to not, all the phrases, boys don't cry, those kinds of things that prevent us from actually being in touch with those emotions and have those things snuffed out and shut out of boys. And boys need a rite of passage, a ritual that welcomes them into the community as men. That's a clear delineation, because otherwise we have grown boys
Yeah.
in men's bodies running around in positions of power that don't have access to their emotional depth and clarity on how to interact respectfully with others, because
Yeah.
they're operating from a predatory power rather than a collaborative, non-predatory power. So, I've been lucky. I've had to lose things to get to this point.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
I think that's a fascinating point, is the patriarchal influence on our collective of this grasp for power, this lack mindset, this if you have it, then I can't, this taking an ownership and conquering, versus there's enough for all. If I have it, that means you have it too. We can take care of each other and ourselves at the same time. That I think is a big shift that is happening in the collective, and it will happen slowly, but I think that's definitely the way we are headed, is casting off a lot of those older toxic masculine patriarchal traits of domination and squashing emotions and creating more space for everyone's rich emotional spectrum, and honoring that and starting to be able to have the language and the tools to deal with it in ourselves and within other people.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the things that Rick taught me is you can come from a place of love or you can come from a place of fear.
Yeah.
And the more we come from that place of love, uh, the better the world gets and the better our inner world gets. And that impacts how we see the rest of the world. And um, all of those domineering power-based models come from a place ultimately of fear, of not having enough,
Yep.
not being able to get enough, all of it.
Yeah, I agree. There's only two core emotions that inform everything, and it's fear and love. And it's, love is the scarier choice, actually. It's Brene Brown says that joy is our
Ooh,
most vulnerable emotion, because what happens when that gets taken
ooh.
away? How temporary is it? Like, I felt so good and now I don't have it. And and I think that risk is absolutely worth the reward. I don't want to live a life without joy and without love and without these deep experiences, even if it hurts sometimes, even if it hurts really fucking bad sometimes. I would still rather come from that place of love, have those experiences, and risk that sometimes you might lose them. That's okay.
Survival is insufficient. We
Yeah.
need far more flavor to life than that. And even if it hurts,
Yeah.
we love, we fall, we try, we get up again.
Great. And if we can also
Um,
like have a little humor about these failings, like laugh it off a little bit, stop taking it like this human experience so seriously. Like, I don't know, some levity to it all, I think is helpful. And that comes after spending some dark healing days, that it can be a little funnier now. Things aren't as life and death as dramatic all the time as they used to be for me, right? Because then if you
I
zoom out in the
mean,
big picture, you're like, it's fine.
if we are the universe experiencing itself, the universe is lonely and said, I'm going to chop myself up into a million different pieces and turn myself into stardust and humans and people and rocks and minerals and animals, so that I can experience myself in all these different ways. It's all play, even the
Yeah.
sorrow, even the joy, even the grief. All of it's part of the play and the delightful flavoring of human life and experience. And what, you're gonna cut off parts of your soul to not experience the full spectrum of it?
Called
That was
limiting.
the whole.
Yeah, if we think about like the human experience relative to every other life form that we know, that we currently know of, we have these unique capabilities to laugh, to cry, to love, to orgasm. Why are we not soaking all those up, right? And with the orgasms come tears sometimes. So be it. I'd rather have the
Tears of joy too.
orgasms. Yeah.
Okay, speaking of humor, you used this analogy about a cake that I really just enjoyed in this article. Can you share that analogy and tell us about it?
Yes. So as this relationship was ending, well, actually at the beginning of the relationship, when we started having sex, we had the conversation like, is this just sex? Do you want something more? It was established that something more was on the table. Turns out after some time, that was not really true. And that's what I mean by triggering other people, right? Like at the time, I believe he said what was true to him at the time. And as things progressed, it turns out he is in that camp of emotionally unavailable, which I was not interested in. And that really clarified it for me also. But as we're ending the relationship, he asks if we can go back to just having a friendly sexual relationship, a friend with benefits, if you will. And I was thinking about it. I was like, let me think about that, because that part of our relationship was great, was always really great. So communicative, so respectful, such fun exploration and joy and pleasure. Like that part was top notch. And so I was like, do I want to go back to that? And what it felt like was he just wanted the cake. He didn't want to put in any of the other work that he had been putting in to enjoy this tasty dessert, right? Previously we had been, you text every day. Okay, so you're going to the store, you're getting the ingredients, you're choosing things, you're investing in the experience, right? Then you come home and you're assembling the ingredients, you're putting everything together. That's like going on dates and having our intimate interactions. And then you bake the cake and you wait for it to cool, and then you get to ice it, and then you get to eat it, right? That's when you get that joy, that pleasure, the sexual fun. And it's like he wanted to cut out all of that and just walk into the bakery and be like, give me a slice of the chantilly cake and I'm out. And I was like, I, no, no, actually, no, that doesn't work for me anymore. If we had started like that, maybe. But being able to like rewind and undo and pretend like I don't know what a homemade cake tastes like, um, just felt incredibly disrespectful and unenjoyable for me. So that was my analogy. Yeah, you don't get the cake unless you're putting in the work. Um, which is a new standard, you know. And sometimes a mass-produced bakery only Hubig's pie, whatever, like sometimes that will suffice. Don't get me wrong. But in this instance, I was like, no, you can't just skip all that. And what's so funny is that this keeps coming up in on the dating apps recently. Several men I've run into seem to be looking for a friends with benefits, but they mean like real friends, like friends who hang out and go to the movies and have sex. But they don't want the commitment. They don't actually want any emotional involvement or whatever. And I'm like, again, how do you turn that off? I don't understand how you spend time with someone, having fun and physically connecting, and you're supposed to just like robotically not get there. but I'm finding
Yeah.
this as a trend that that now I can say, no, that doesn't work for me. No, we
Hmm.
can't be, if we're not friends.
Hmm. Yep.
My friends and I have emotional connections. So maybe I
Yep.
have higher, right? I have higher standards for my friends also, and the people I call friends. You could be an acquaintance, I guess, but you could be someone I know,
Yep.
but
Like
you're not a
tier three,
friend.
tier four, tier five. You don't get to be
Yeah.
that.
You don't
Yeah.
get to take
It's
up
a
my
ranking system
time
here.
and my energy and my attention. Like if you think about where your team is going, your time, your energy, your attention, and your money, these people are asking to drain you of your time, energy, and attention and drain you of it. They're not providing much in return. And if I were in the place where I was also maybe still emotionally involved with someone else or emotionally unavailable, that might be fine. But I'm not. So it's not fine. You don't get the
Yeah.
cake. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that shot selection, I think, is so important, right? Because so much of what happens in a relationship afterwards, we do a lot of post production work trying to fix
Yeah.
it, go to
Yeah.
couples counseling and therapy together and all of those things, when really it would have been better served up front with choosing the right person in the first place and not trying to shoehorn
Yeah.
someone that wanted something different into a relationship that they weren't ready for.
And that takes everyone accepting responsibility for where they're at and being honest to say it, you know? And
Mm.
I think that's where it can get convoluted and again goes back to the fear of, well, if I tell this person that, then I don't get the cake.
What I
And
really
I don't
want.
then I don't get what I
Yep.
really want, right? And
Yep.
that's where
Yeah.
like I, you know, I we have to be more discerning to figure out if people are really being honest with themselves. Therefore, they're capable of being honest with us. And
Hmm.
that's not easy work.
No, that
Not a
is the
mind
hardest
reader.
work I've ever had to do.
Yeah.
And it is constant work because especially for me, it's getting clear on what I really want. It's
Hmm.
doing the self work to understand, man, what are the things that are in me that are still just reactions? And you don't want to disappoint another human being. There's a people pleaser aspect to it. There's
Yep.
there's all of those things that come up in that context that God, I need to be honest with myself so that I can be honest with this person.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you also inspired me when we were talking earlier in the year, maybe it was at the end of last year. You had been able to narrow down your wants, your top core desires in a romantic relationship to like 3 bullet points. I have like 5 pages in a
Yeah,
journal of things I want. And I remember
yeah,
you saying like that's messy. You're not going to be able to focus on that. And you're so right. When it comes to like our magic and getting what we want, we're never, if we don't know what we want, we can't get it. And I've spent a lot
yeah,
of time being like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want, but I do. And your 3 bullet points were very inspiring. I think I stole 2 out of the 3. Would you share those with us and how you got
yeah.
there?
I want to I want to start off by saying I think a lot of the things that we end up stating as needs in a relationship are wants or very surface level things like commonalities, what this
Uh,
person looks like, and all of
uh,
those things to me are I don't know. Yeah, sure. It's how you can start off a conversation or an interaction, but that holds nothing in terms of year 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of a relationship. We're talking about depth here.
uh,
And um, so what if you like Star Wars together or Marvel or whatever?
uh,
Like that's such surface level,
mm,
and that won't last more than 2 conversations. Like that's
yeah,
the most basic thing. I think let's get into what really makes a relationship work. And what's important once you get past the limerence phase where all the juicy chemicals are still working in your brain. And let's
yeah,
talk about something that's real. If you're talking about a true life partner, something with mutuality like that. And so for me, those 3 bullet points are a I want a secure attachment. And
Mhm.
you've done a lot of work on this, reading Stan Tatkin and Harville Hendricks, and there are plenty of models for what are the rituals that we need to do to have a secure relationship. And that can mean different things to different people. What
Mhm.
someone feels secure in might not be secure enough for their partner. And so
Right.
having that discussion of what do we need, what does this relationship need for it to be secure, and having that be paramount. So
Mhm.
one, secure relationship. Um, Two, parallel growth or mutual growth. How are we growing together? And this is specific to me because, especially in the last 2 years, so much in my life has changed. And
Mhm.
there are people that I will only see so often because they're still in the same place that they were a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And that only runs for so long. And so I think that relationships are our greatest source of healing, all of
Mhm.
those old traumas. It can be the greatest inspiration for growth. And in a real relationship, I think I can help you grow on your path and achieve your potential and achieve whatever that truth is to you. And that's what you do for me as well. And so um, having that parallel growth where we're both growing in whatever directions, but we're supporting each other in that
Yeah.
growth. Um, and finally, for me, number 3 is soul bearing intimacy.
Mhm.
One of the biggest gifts I think you can give to another human being is to see them fully and completely as they are in all of their faults and beauty and joy, and own their shadow and their gold, and cherish that and treasure that. So if you have to start off a relationship where you're hiding something,
Yeah.
where you're hiding what you really want because you just want to get the cake, or whatever that might
Yeah.
be, then you're denying not just that person of what they really want, but yourself of, I don't know, something that's really amazing and incredible and true intimacy. So soul bearing intimacy. And that for me is, I think, really the gold standard, because if you have these 3 things, if you have parallel growth, if you have a secure attachment, if you have soul bearing intimacy, all of the other things are talking points,
Mhm.
negotiable discussions, whatever it is. There might be some things that are more serious, like where do we want to live together, or do we want to have kids or not, and how we
Yeah.
want to shape our life together. But now that's a discussion rather than, I don't know, we build our life off of that, but don't have the 3 core things that really make the relationship work.
Mhm.
Those things like might mean you can live together and be miserable and then divorce in 20 years.
Yeah.
That's not what I want. Let's have the thing, the core.
Mhm.
And I have been fortunate enough to have been chosen. I know what that feels like. I know now what a good relationship looks like and what kind of work it takes to get there. And so I won't go where I'm not invited, and I won't stay where I'm not wanted. And it
Mhm.
has to be, this has to be deliberate, and this has to be
Yeah.
part of how you intentionally set up your life. This is one of the most, our relationships are one of the most important decisions that we make.
Absolutely. And I love that the clarity that that brings. And also, you said something in there that I want to circle back to. The parallel growth when we're growing and expanding can often create this chasm of loneliness because a lot of people will drop away. We're not always able to keep past relationships. I had a friend for 20 years. We're not friends anymore because I grew and they didn't like that. We changed and changed our dynamics and changed my boundaries with that person, and that that was unacceptable. So I think that nuance of parallel growth is really important. That you go headed in the same general direction, and that we do get to raise each other up and see each other in the muck of the growth.
Yeah.
You know, most growth isn't clean, easy, and pretty. It's kind of messy. It can be kind of dark. And I think that's also part of our own self-love, as well as truly being able to love someone else, is, you're right, not hiding that stuff, not hiding our flaws, not presenting our best foot forward, but being like, this is my whole mess. And this may not be for you, and that's fair, but this is everything, you know,
Yeah.
the shadows and the light and all of it, I think, are so important. And that's incredibly vulnerable and scary and brave as fuck to share it. So
Yeah.
that,
I
yeah,
kind
that's
of like
lovely.
starting off conversation. This is how I'm screwed up. You should know that ahead of time.
See if they stay through coffee or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. If you're not, all good. It's not everybody's. I'm definitely not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah,
Right. I know that.
yeah. I love that you know that, and also are unapologetic about it, because that's where we need to be. Like, I'm somebody's cup of tea, but if it's not yours, it's not yours, and that's fine.
Yeah. I I know myself well enough to know that I am not mainstream. I am cult. Most people don't give a shit about me, but the people that love me fucking love me. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I should have cursed, but yes,
Oh, I
absolutely.
have been. There's a musical theater show. I'd rather be 9 people's favorite thing than 900 people's ninth favorite thing.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I only need 9 friends. That's fine.
Um, yeah, that's more than I can handle most of the
Plenty,
time.
really.
I want to talk here briefly before we wrap up about, even you said this, even shallow, casual relationships create a wake in their ending. And I think that's so important. Um, no judgment of hookup culture, but like what you're giving a piece of yourself to every person that you spend time with or have intimacy with, and that ultimately, I think, like, you have to be mindful of. I know for me that that's not for me because I'm way too sensitive to go through heartbreak that many times. um I love this line from Dessa, the poet of sorrow and joy. To make love, you got to take off the brace. You do have to be vulnerable. You do
Mhm.
have to be willing to open yourself up to that risk of being hurt.
Yeah, and this notion that if we don't open up, we can never get hurt, that's back to the fear and the love. And that's all based in fear. If we don't ever open up, we're never going to experience that love. And within
Yeah.
hookup culture and casual sex and all this, like, it's easy to have a physical exchange and get your physical needs met, even in a safe, lovely, respectful way. And
Yeah.
that is not the same experience as making love, as a true, deep, energetic exchange of feeling not vulnerable, but safe, you
Hmm.
know, um, feeling free to express and explore your full spectrum of desires, to be able to, like, fully open. And that I find is so incredibly rare these days,
Yeah.
but it's definitely the dragon we're chasing.
And I think that because we are opening ourselves up to those risks, we also have to learn to create, use this self-sourcing
Yeah.
phrase multiple times throughout the article. Um, I really think that's important because if you're opening yourself up to emotional attachment, you're opening yourself up to the risk of hurt. And
Yep.
so having a practice that takes care of you and being
Hmm.
able to do that, having your self-care menu,
Yes.
this is what I need to feel good and to take care of myself after I've been hurt, that
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily rely on, that doesn't go into, I've been hurt, so now I'm gonna go into, what did you call it? Fight or fuck mode.
Yeah. Fuck or fight mode. Uh huh. Yeah, which is self-sabotaging and doesn't actually feel good the next day, you know?
Right.
And that's the difference with the self-sourcing is when you're not seeking outside, when you're able to provide for yourself, then everything else is a bonus. Like I was like, I could have called one of my friends to cuddle me. I absolutely could have, and someone would have, and I love and appreciate that. But learning how to like cuddle myself and to self-soothe
Mm,
and to bring my own parasympathetic nervous system down has been such a game changer in how in my attachment style. Like I was anxious attachment for sure, and I sought outside of myself for both love and fixing and feeling good. And it's been this journey to being able to self-source all of that, which has not created a complete independence, but actually a greater capability to have these loving relationships.
mhm.
If I am able to do it, I am able to participate in it. I am able to share it. I am able to not depend on you in a needy sort of way, but to be able to rely on you in a loving, open, expressive growth way.
Yeah.
Yeah, the self-sourcing has been a game changer for sure. Taking care of ourselves. I do a lot of energy protection and recalling, especially with the sexual practices. Like,
What do you mean by that?
as you mentioned, every time we're spending time with someone, we're creating an energetic imprint somewhere,
Mhm.
and um, they can just float out there. And so I've started this practice of like recalling all those energetic babies back to me to take care of, to reclaim um, that those energetic imprints get reabsorbed, and it's strengthened my boundaries and how I feel good within myself, and is part of my own self pleasure practice that I don't have to share with anybody else,
Mhm.
and get to experience that with myself without anybody else's input, which creates more safety and curiosity when someone else is around, you know.
Yeah.
um Again, that self-sourcing, but those recalling that the energy that is created by our interactions with other people, I think is incredibly important. And I've gotten diligent about it here in New Orleans, because I will come home from the French Quarter and I feel like I have brought home a dozen people with me,
Mm,
energetically speaking. It is so noisy down there on various planes of existence,
mhm.
that I come home and I like cleanse immediately. Like most people, when they come home from the French Quarter, you're taking off your shoes. Like you're not going to take those inside. You're going to wash your hands. You touch something sticky for sure. And it's that, but for my energy, like
Mm.
calling it back to me, cleansing it off, saying you're not welcome to stay. It's just me and mine. Thank you. It feels like restarting your phone, like all the background apps
Uh-huh.
get shut down and everything just works better and cleaner by doing these energy recalls and this like energetic hygiene.
I really appreciate you sharing that practice. I'm gonna steal that.
Yeah. I love a selenite wand. I also make like a salt spray. I'll like simmer lemon and rosemary and some salt just for a little while, let it cool, put it in a spray bottle. And when I get home, especially that's my French Quarter one for sure. And just say, I call all my energy back to me now. Anything that is not here to serve my best and highest good must leave.
Mm,
And just spray myself from head to toe. It feels really good.
mm.
Yeah.
What a good
Little.
practice. I'm off book at this point. That was what I
Same.
had in from reading the article, but yeah,
Yeah.
we're off book. So you want to go crazy? Let's go.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I talked a little bit about my self practices. I'm curious what what you do within like your own self-love world. Like how do you keep Kevin happy day to day?
I hate that you ask me this because this is I struggle with this. I am so for a little bit of context, for the last 2 years I've been traveling in 40,000 miles, 32 states and national parks. Later here I stand Kafka on the shore, no closer to the answers than before. And so all of that self journey, self discovery, as I'm reading Jung's red book, Liber Novus, turns out that, yeah, you know what? I've been doing a lot of running away and all of that, surrounding myself with bright lights and loud nights and strangers in a form of self collapse. And now here I am, kind of settled in, and I have a lot of time to myself, and I'm not troubleshooting the logistics of living on the road like I used to be, that kept my mind busy enough that I didn't have to think about the things that I was running away from. And so this past month, after having been moved in, it's been a very challenging period of relearning and learning, like, what's good for me today,
Yeah.
because it was easy when I had festivals and concerts and things on the road. Like, that's the mission, that's what we're going to go do, and that was fine, right? That was part of my self rediscovery, self journey, figuring out who I am today, what do I like. But now the question is, I've been nesting, and that's reminded me of a lot of painful memories. And so it's been, okay, how does your new version of nesting and self-care looks like? Whether that's taking a day off to go read and write, making sure that you do exercise. I don't think I've seen the sun in about 3 days. I should probably go outside today. Um, but, no, seriously, I just remembered I did make that promise. I need to go out. Those kinds of things
Mhm.
that sometimes it's really basic stuff that you forget. Like,
Yeah.
are you eating correctly? Are you, those things are important for me.
Thank you.
I have a uh it used to be something else, but now it's different. So this morning practice, this morning ritual, SAVERS is the acronym, SAVERS.
Mhm.
Silence, meditation, exercise, affirmations,
Mhm.
visualizations, exercise, reading, and then scribing or journaling. And
Mhm.
if I do those things, I tend to have a pretty decent day. And so those are kind of like, that's my barometer of how well am I doing. Like, if I do those things, then I at least know that I have that. Um, I'll share the affirmation.
Okay.
Uh,
If you want.
wow. Okay. Uh, um, I am guided and led to divine inspiration. My actions are sanctioned. My acts are consecrated. As king, I am steward over all I've been given. I am responsible for that which I've tamed. As warrior, I protect and provide with selfless abandonment. Only the mission remains. As magician, I am blessed with sacred knowledge. Impossible is nothing. As lover, I create connection and community. I am emotion and empathy embodied. I have everything that I want. Anything that I need will be provided. Je sais qui je suis le blaireau. I channel the divine to do the impossible in service to others. And I am here to paint the grand graffiti murals of my mind and heart.
Mm, yummy. I mean, you have such a beautiful way with words, which I knew about you before. How you express that is so impactful.
Yeah. It's a promise, it's a reminder, it's a mission, it's all of those
Yeah,
things.
it's all of those things. I have a short morning practice if I can sit down and meditate for 10 minutes. But I started with Reiki in in the fall. And that was my 21-day spiritual cleanse, was saying the Reiki prayer every day, and then 10 minutes of silent meditation, because I'm very good at guided. I've gone through so many things on Insight Timer, I can't even tell you, but it was like, can I sit in silence and meditate? And I've been doing that since November, 10 minutes every day. We have our own, I've created my own version of the Reiki prayer that is not nearly as poetic as yours, but it's those things we repeat day after day that we come to believe, right? That's the point of the affirmation, is reminding ourselves of what we're capable of, reminding of ourselves of something we don't quite believe yet. And I found that to be impactful. The other thing I do is habit looping. So I make my tea, I sit down, I do my prayer and my meditation, and then I may have my caffeine. And getting that reward after it, I find to be why I'm still doing it. You know, my tea is
Nice. I
brewing
like that.
in those minutes, and all I want in the morning is that caffeine, but it's not ready till I'm done with my meditation. Yeah.
I'll make you this deal. If you ever text me and say, "Hey, let's do a 10-minute Insight Timer silent meditation,"
Yeah.
I will jump on that and do that with you.
Okay. I'll text you every morning.
Okay.
I dare you. I love that. I love an accountability buddy. Yeah. I haven't managed to do it through Mardi Gras, for the record. Like, morning is relative,
Wow.
but
Right. Yeah. That's a big deal.
I didn't break my streak during carnival season, so I'm incredibly proud.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. I'm gonna
Yeah.
steal from that.
But I also think you're right that, like, day to day is different. Where my energy is at, what's going on, that all varies, and giving ourselves some grace and compassion for our day to day experience is incredibly important. You know, I like to have
Yeah.
an hour in the morning to do whatever on that list feels good that day. On fire moons, it's absolutely movement and exercise. And on water moons, it's
Yep.
probably journaling and crying, you know?
Yep.
And that's okay. I spend an hour doing whatever feels good in the morning after that 10-minute meditation. And that's huge. You're right, it absolutely sets the tone for the day.
Yeah. The shamans would ask, when was the last time you cried or laughed or sang or danced? Do those things. Those are the things that bring
Yes.
you to well-being, peace,
Mhm.
whatever.
The power of dance.
Move some
Yes.
energy around.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that. That is some of the practices we do on the third Mondays at Balance Drawer, is different ways of somatic movement to move our energy, shaking, meditation. Sometimes it's just a dance party. That's true also. And I think devoting that time for yourself, committing to yourself for that time has, again, the biggest ripple, the biggest impact 2 days down the road, 10 days down the road, 6 months down the road, 3 years down the road.
Yeah.
And if our listeners have learned anything from the two of us, it's that travel does not make you find yourself. It's when you start holding still that the questions actually come up.
There are no geographic cures, and I didn't think it was a geographic cure in the first place. But yeah, um, go deep into your soul, young human,
Yeah.
and talk to your soul. This book is nuts. It's Young talking to his soul, having a literal dialogue with his soul, and I'm going, that's the dialogue that I should be having with my soul. What are the things that my soul needs to be saying to me? And a lot of it is patience. Sit, be patient, which I am not great at. I'm learning from the horses. I have to hold this paradox with grace, and I'm like, oh, I need answers. I have been used to scrolling and getting immediate 2-day delivery or overnight delivery on Amazon. And
Yeah.
you want me to sit and just stew and just and not distract myself with people or new things or whatever. And I just have to exist in this sort of
Ugh.
uncomfortable, shadowy place. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my December, January. I took time off to sit in it. I was like, well, what's next? What's next? I was like, nope, we don't know that yet. We're not going to know that yet. I mean, every 5 minutes had to remind myself to sit and wait and be still. Uh-huh. And it was Young who
Terrifying.
said, until we make the unconscious conscious, we are destined to call it fate. Like it will rule us, and that's what we call fate. I think that's so much of what we talked about today is having the courage, the bravery, the curiosity to dig into that unconscious that drives us. I
Yeah.
think that's our underlying theme for sure. And it's not for everybody. And you may not be ready, but I think there's a lot more of these conversations happening out there. There's more tools available than there have ever been. There are more people and conversations and spaces than ever before. And I find that incredibly exciting and as a herald of the way we're going in the new world. And I love it.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing with Balanced War is really cool, where you're creating that space for people, and you're going to find your people that want
Yeah.
to talk about this and are drawn to this and are
Yeah.
doing the work. And I think that's the most important thing.
And I am so grateful for every person who comes and participates on whatever level they can at that moment, because again, it's not this growth happening in a vacuum. We get to witness each other and share and grow. And there's always some input that excites me about something new to dig into. And then I get to come back and share. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful cycle. Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, let's not miss the opportunity for a plug here. Pocket Tracy has a new thing coming out. Tell them all about it. If
That's
you've liked
right.
this podcast, if you've enjoyed any of the insights that has been shared here today, we are
Yes.
compelled to tell you about. Go ahead.
Hop to Balanced Roar. You can read a lot of articles that we've been writing. You can look at past newsletters, but most importantly, check out the full article on aligned relationships. We are going to be starting a deep dive into aligned relationships this very spring, 2023. And it is going to get into we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the shadows and the self-love and the tools and boundaries and acceptance and samskaras, shadows, schemas, all of it. It's very magic meets psychology, magic and science based everything. It is for every gender and every gender expression. All humans are welcome. If you are solo or with a partner or with three partners, you are welcome. We are breaking a lot of those old stereotypes and examining what feels good for us now on this day. So check it out.
Sign up for the
Balance.
newsletter. Yeah, sign up for the
Yeah.
newsletter to get notified when this launches.
Yes, when the registration is available, which will be later this month, March 2023. And that newsletter will keep you informed. And also you get all sorts of other tidbits in there every other week or so. It's not a daily spam thing. We don't have anything automated to bug you. Full transparency. Kevin, thank you so much for your time, your spirit, your heart, your idea to record one of our crazy conversations, and your willingness to put it on the calendar and do it. I love that, and I always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I look forward to the next one. Let's do it again, and
Yeah,
let's put somebody else in the hot seat.
that's right. I got an idea. So like, subscribe, follow, share, all those things
Hit that
to hear more from
notification
us
bell.
soon. Yeah. And in the meantime, friends, thank you so much. And thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Badger.
Bye, Pocket. Love you.
Love you.